Thank you for coming, and thank me for coming too. Before we begin, I want to tell you that by way of explanation, I have something of a sense of humor. And when people get all stiff around me, it makes me nervous. So I hope that if I laugh, you'll be feeling free to laugh as well. And I hope if we have fun together, that's okay with you. And I'd like to say that I'm very pleased by all the effort that you've put forth to make this place grow and shine as it has, and to keep going even in great adversity. For instance, the passing of His Holiness Pinna Rinpoche. We all suffered, and now we're here, and we're doing what we can to bring about the causes that he can return to us. And so I hope that you will forgive me if I make jokes, or basically I'm shy. So I guess you noticed. So I wanted to bring you something that I thought would be fun. I remember way back at the beginning when I first met His Holiness Pinna Rinpoche. It was on his first visit to the United States. In fact, he wanted to see me. And back in those days, Dharma was kind of confusing. It's like the lamas that came to America, we didn't understand each other just yet. And it took a while for us to come to that point to really understand each other. And mostly it was our lack of understanding that made the problems. But I want to show you something so funny. You all have beautiful, nice, condensed books. And I want to show you what we were working with. We had a few of these, but mostly it was loose leaf, pictures, books stuck together. Oh, let's see. Things here that I don't even recognize anymore. But we all made our own books, and we were all new, and we did our very best. But I wanted to show you this because I thought, what a mess. I thought you'd get a kick out of it. But those were my first practice books. And it was a long time ago. I had the happiness of knowing His Holiness for a long time and having many wonderful experiences with him. I don't mind sharing them with you if you'd like to hear some of them. I'd like to tell you about one time when I was in India and we were traveling around looking for statues. And we were staying in this hotel at a time when it was about 104 degrees Fahrenheit, maybe more. It was so unbearably hot. So His Holiness, who was used to heat, bothered to put me in a hotel with an air conditioning, which I stuck to. And so that was very nice, but I went and I met the woman who was cleaning my room, and she told me about her husband and how sick he was, and how he had cancer, and that he was dying. And she said, would you come and give a blessing to my husband before he dies? And I said, oh, it's worthless if I give him a blessing, but if His Holiness gives him a blessing, that's something. That's definitely worthwhile. And so she said, oh, would he do that? And I said, I don't know, I'll ask. And they were Hindu. So when His Holiness first told me that, when I asked him rather first, he said, I don't think Hindus like Tibetans very much, we eat meat. And I said, well, I think in this case, Holiness, with due respect, it doesn't matter. And these people so want to see you. They so want the blessing. Her husband is dying. She has to raise children by herself. And he lives in a tin box on top of the roof. The misery, that these people were going through. So His Holiness was very wrathful with me. He said, I had to leave Tibet and come to America, and I watched my own people die. And now I'm supposed to think this is important? He was very wrathful. But I know what he was doing. He was creating the merit and clearing the obstacles for this event to happen. But he was very kind. As you know, His Holiness was so kind. So finally, he stopped his foot. He said, okay, I'll go. So then we climbed, and his knees were bad then too. He had very sore knees. So we climbed up, way up to the roof, and it was hellish, really. It was just hellish. I was so sorry, embarrassed that I put His Holiness through that, but then I was so happy for the people that would receive the blessing. And when he came to the door, they were living in a tin shack on top of the building. It must have been 115 degrees in there. It was so horrible. And His Holiness came to the door when we were there, and we said, His Holiness is here to give the blessing. And she got down on the floor and put her head to his feet. We got down again. She couldn't stop. She just kept doing it. It was heartbreaking, the devotion that she felt for someone who would not abandon her in this terrible time, who would provide comfort and some help. And he did that. He spoke to her in Hindi, which he spoke, and he said to her, what is the problem? How long has he been sick? And that sort of thing. And they hardly could speak. They were so grateful, so happy to have his blessing, and that he would think of them because they were lowly people. According to the system in India, they were lowly people and poor beyond belief. And they said some days he doesn't even eat because there's no food. And so he was told the condition of this man, and you could see in his face that he had great compassion. And the man had cancer of the mouth, and you could see that something was terribly wrong. But he had no medicine, and the agony that he was experiencing was hard to understand, definitely hard to understand. And here's the kicker. His Holiness said, open your mouth. And I tried to peek. What I saw in there was horrible. And he said, open your mouth wide, wide. And he started pounding out mantras. Dun, 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 dun. Nothing I recognized, but just really pounding out the mantras. And as he did that, he was blowing in his mouth, pounding out more mantras, blowing in his mouth. And he kept doing this for quite a long time. And they were so thankful. They offered him food and drink, which of course he didn't take. And, excuse me. They offered him food and drink, and he was working his heart out for them. And then as we left, excuse me, my voice is hoarse. Then as we left, as we were leaving, and they were bowing and bowing and bowing, it was so beautiful. And we got down towards the room, and I said to him, Holiness, is he going to live now? And he said, no, there's no chance. The merit is gone. There's no chance for him to live now. He said, but he will have no pain. Already his mouth was just chewed up with cancer. And he said he will have no pain. And I know that's true because I met her again soon, the next day of our travels, and she said he had no pain that day. I was so happy that that happened, just thrilled that when His Holiness came by my room, I left the door open so that I could see where he was, and he could see where I was, and he went past my room, and I just, went down to him and I said, Holiness, I know that was difficult, but thank you. Thank you so much on behalf of them. I don't know how to express my gratitude. And he said, no, my thank you. I will never forget that story. He was grateful that I had insisted that he take this opportunity for them. And he saw the value of it. He saw that these people were helped and that they were innocent. Just innocent people. Just regular innocent people. And he helped them so much that he never had pain, to my knowledge. We wrote back and forth a little while after that, and he never had pain. To me, that is the most moving story about him that I know. And I find it impossible to see that and not understand that he was Buddha, that he is Buddha. No one but a Buddha would do something like that, or could do something like that. I miss him so much. I know you do too. Now I'd like to tell you a story about, let me see if I can think of another story about His Holiness. Well, I'll tell something else and then we'll see if we can come back to His Holiness. I wanted to tell stories about how, in the beginning, all the lamas ever taught us, including His Holiness, was about the bodhicitta. Really, that's all we ever got, was the bodhicitta. And people would ask for Dzogchen, 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 give us the Dzogchen. And they would say, no, you're not ready, you're not ready. Let's start with the bodhicitta. After a while, Americans got really sick of the bodhicitta. And that's really sad, but they did. I mean, they did. I never did. In fact, I never stopped teaching bodhicitta. And now I know that it's kind of reduced to a small bit of speech or teaching right at the beginning of a practice, or a wong, or some sort of teaching where we are taught the bodhicitta, but it's very condensed compared to what it used to be. When they first came to America, it was just bodhicitta and really nothing else. But the American students were insistent that they were ready for the Dzogchen. Eventually the lamas gave in, and I'm sorry that that happened, because I think we missed something. I now notice that some practitioners, when they practice, they're calm, and that's good, but they're also solemn. Not so happy looking, not so joyous. And Dharma is joyous. To be able to practice Dharma is a feast. There's nothing in the world more joyous than that, because you have something, you have Buddha in the palm of the hand. You have something that nobody else has here in America. Other people have other teachers, and they have other lineages, and that's great, but we have this. And we should be thrilled and happy and try to maintain the understanding of how precious this is. I'd like to include also that the day we decide that we are too advanced for bodhicitta is the day that we've lost our way. Because if all we ever studied from this point on, or from any point, was the bodhicitta, it would be enough. Sometimes When we go into the higher teachings, we forget what the root was. And bodhicitta is the root. It's like a layer cake. Bodhicitta is the root of everything that comes after. If you cannot develop the bodhicitta, it will be very difficult to stay on the path. And this is like how they say the bodhicitta is like the Dakini's warm breath. It is what we consider to be the activity of the Buddhas, the nature of the Buddhas, like the sun's rays, part of the sun, and yet coming out to bless all. So when we think about the bodhicitta, and we think maybe that's an early practice, and maybe I'm being insulted by being taught this practice, or maybe I should be allowed to go on. Don't hurry. If I had my choice, I would teach nothing but bodhicitta. Nothing but. And I used to do that, almost like, what is it, Baskin's 51 ice creams? I used to do like that. I used to think about 51 different ways, as many ways as I could, to teach bodhicitta. I would get really creative so that it wouldn't be boring. And what I found happened was that most people didn't notice that they were only being taught the bodhicitta. Because I would make it in such a way that it seemed different and interesting, and I would make people laugh, and that always helped. You can't be stiff when you're laughing. And it made it joyful. All of us felt great joy to be together, as I see you do too. It is the most beautiful part, I think, of the Dharma. And again, if we say that it's the smallest part, or the least of the parts, it's a mistake. Do you understand that? All of you? It's a mistake if we put bodhicitta lower than anything else. Because in order to practice, we need the bodhicitta desperately. It's what keeps us going. It's the nourishment. And my philosophy is, if we're on the path and we've done like we do every year, which is practice really hard and really purely here, and then go home and forget about it. So many of us do that. My experience has been that if we go back to the bodhicitta and study the suffering of sentient beings again, and again, study the suffering of sentient beings so that you can understand why it is that you're practicing. You'll have strength to practice because you'll see them and they are suffering terribly. Seeing that woman on the roof and her husband, that was for me a great motivator. It was a great, how can I say it, strengthener. It gave me spiritual muscle. So that whatever I did, bodhicitta was always the crown on the head of my practice. And then above that, of course, Sawe Lama, above the crown of my head and in my heart, as I know he is in yours. We have a great opportunity here. When I come here, I don't take advantage because I'm shy and I don't like to come out. But I still practice and I still do what I can to benefit sentient beings. For instance, I think about ordinary things and I think about how can I bring benefit to people who have ordinary lives and ordinary situations. Well, one thing that I did was I started a food bank. so that we are feeding the people in our neighborhood, in our community, who have nothing. It's not a rich area. And those that have nothing have food. They can come and get food for their families. No expense or nothing like that. We do ask them, if you take something, then bring something. Like if you take some, beans and bread and all that sort of thing, bring something, even if it's just a tiny something. To make that exchange, to make that connection. But there are a lot of people in my community that are eating very well because of our efforts. And I don't feel like that is separate from Dharma. There's practical Dharma and there's ultimate Dharma. And I feel that both are essential, and all are supported by the great bodhicitta. Another thing that we have done, as you probably know all this stuff, but we've created a animal sanctuary for rare and exotic parrots. His Holiness saw them and loved them. He loved them. And these parrots are taken care of by us. They were abused before. Many of them lived all their lives in cages that were too small for them to spread their wings. Many of them have never seen the sky. Many of them were fed graham crackers, stupid things like that they should never eat. And so there was so much cruelty in the exotic bird community, we decided to see if we could do anything. And we did, and now my son runs that exotic bird sanctuary, and all the birds get to go outside. We have a huge area for them to fly. They can actually fly, which they never could do before. It's beautiful to see. His Holiness was so happy about that. If you remember, His Holiness loves animals. And also, especially he loves birds. In India, he used to keep birds, as you probably also know. But he loved that and felt that that was Dharma in action, activity Dharma. And of course, I'm a Dakini, or they say I am. And I'm not so sure, but they say I am. And then that being the case, that has to do with the activity of the Buddhas. And so that being the case, I feel it is my responsibility to try to bring some benefit in that way, the activity way. So I try to feed everybody, like everybody, animals, people, the birds outside my house. Everybody knows we spend a lot of money on feeding people and feeding beings. And it's a happy thing to do. It makes us all happy. And so many beings are fed, and they are having what they need because of the kindness of His Holiness Pena Rinpoche, what he taught me, the precious bodhicitta of the nectar, I should say, of kindness that is inherent in the Dharma. This is, what I was taught, what I learned, and it's what I practice. We have a prisoner program also. We like to forget people that have done something wrong and just throw them away. But we have a program where we can go and teach them some Dharma, because these men will die in prison. And they will have no way to get any kind of help or to straighten themselves out for a proper rebirth, a good rebirth. They don't know how to die well. Of course, they have no teachings on POA. And so that being so sad, and it makes us sad, we're able to go out and do these things. And it's why KPC is always broke. We don't have any money because we spend it on the needs of sentient beings. And I'm very, very happy about that. That makes it worth it to me. We also have, there are many, in our food program, there are many people that don't know how to cook the kind of food that we provide for them. Because they're poor people and they're used to poor, cheap, poor food. And so we've been trying to teach them how to cook lentils and beans and things that are very nourishing, rice, and so forth. Very nourishing, and we try to teach them how to make protein and how to eat well so that they're feeling better. And this is a totally new thing for them. They don't know how to be healthy. And their children don't know how to be healthy. And many of them eat too much sugar and too much candy, and they're unwell. And so we're teaching them, we're involved in the community enough to teach them how to cook, how to prepare food, and what is nourishing and what is not. These are great, pleasureful things that we do. Not that they're so great, but they are great pleasure. To see people become nourished, to see people learn some Dharma, whether they understand or not, just to understand Om Mani Padme Hum, to even repeat Om Mani Padme Hum is so much better than anything else that they could receive in the ordinary world. Very simple things like that can make the world of difference, as you know. When we teach people, one way that I teach people is online. I have a Twitter account, and many times we just tweet. Do you know what Twitter is? Some of you do? Maybe? Okay. So what we do is we will teach them Om Mani Padme Hum, and then show them how the letters look in Tibetan, and have them see blessing mantras, so that they'll, liberation through seeing, so that they will receive the blessing of that. Because these people will never, ever practice Dharma. So should we throw them out? No, of course not. There are people like urban people, people in countries that probably have never even heard of Dharma, people, inner city people, outer city people, people down the Bible Belt in the middle of the country. All of them hear a little bit of the Dharma and the kindness that it shows, and they want to learn. They want to learn. So I do the best that I can to teach them online, and we make films and sort of document some small teachings. Nothing very deep, because that would require another kind of opportunity. But we are able to teach them just enough so that their lives, so that there's a blessing in being human. So that as human beings, there will be some use, that they have the capacity to think and to understand. Of course, I love animals, we all know that, but animals cannot learn the Dharma. As much as I would love to see my animals achieve liberation, that will never happen through practicing Dharma. If I practice and I dedicate, maybe that's something. If you practice and you dedicate, maybe that's something. But still, they cannot practice. They don't have that part of their brain that can make them practice. But they can hear. And they can hear mantra and receive the blessing. So we even tell people, say this blessing to your animals as they die. Om Ami Dewa Shri. Of course, you all know that. But that's a revelation to someone who's never heard Dharma before, or to someone who didn't know there was some way that they could help their little dogs and their cats as they die, and their little birds and so forth. They didn't know that there was any really way to do that. And so we've told them, if they're coming close to death, if death is coming, at this time you should say in their ears, Om Ami Dewa Shri, Om Ami Dewa Shri. And we even put up recordings of how it sounds so that they can recite it correctly. And so they'll get the closest thing possible to a lung. So it's not the same, but it's the best we can do. I'm not proud. If anything, I'm shy, and I'm not proud. And one thing that I feel is, if what you can do is a small thing, you should do it. If all you can do is give a little bit, you should give it. If all you can do is say, well, my dog can't have any blessing, and then you give nothing, that's not so good. But instead, why not do for them what you can do for them? They can hear the sound of mantra. They can see the letters. They don't cognize them. They can't understand what it means, but they can see it. They can see images. I have recorded an Amitabha recording of singing the mantra so that it can be played for people who are dying or who have just died, so that Amitabha mantra will be in their ears as they are dying. These are all the things that I know how to do. They're very simple, but these are not people who will ever come here, and their pets. They'll never come here. How can they receive a blessing if we don't reach out and make it possible? I'm very interested in R&B music and hip hop. Sorry. If that disappoints you, I'm really sorry. But I'm interested in that kind of music, and I'll be honest with you and say that. And what I've noticed is that when I reach out, I have 65,000 followers. No, 68,000 followers. And when they will contact me and ask me to teach them, what is the answer to this question? You know, you said this, does that mean that? Or does it mean this? And these are people that have never heard of Dharma before, just know nothing about it, and then they want to know. And I recommend books for them, and that sort of thing. We send out pictures of stupas, all the stupas that I've built, so that they'll have that contact. You know, they'll have that contact of being able to see. So I'm proud of that. I'm happy about that. And I think that even as we get to the higher levels of teachings, we should never, never, ever think that it's inappropriate to lower oneself, to do simple goodness for all beings. You remember, you've heard His Holiness the Dalai Lama say, if I had to pick a religion, it would be kindness. He said, kindness is my true religion. I feel like that too. I feel that is wise, because so many more people require simple kindness than will ever manage to come and receive Dharma. There's just no karma for it. There's no merit for it. And so we have to do what we can. There may be merit to see a picture, but not merit to practice Dharma. And so we try to get it in sideways. You know, how can I do this? How can I get some Dharma to them? That's what I'm always thinking. How can I get it there? And so that seems to be working. Many people follow me that are not people you would see following a Tibetan Buddhist teacher. It's just ordinary people that have an interest. And so because of that, 68,000 people, I mean, think of it this way, 68,000 people that would never have seen a stupa, that would never have seen a mantra, that would never have seen anything that blesses them. Now they can do that. It may not be much, but it's a lot better than nothing. So I think as we ascend to the higher teachings, we have to remember the lower teachings. Well, there is no lower teaching, but we have to remember the bodhicitta. We have to remember that. If we're not kind, there's nothing that we're doing that's useful. And if we're not kind, there's no way we're going to be able to keep our practice going, because we will forget the suffering of sentient beings. And if we do that, we're lost. We forget why we're practicing, we don't practice. And then if we're lucky, we may see one person where you can read the suffering on their face. You can see that. And if you're fortunate enough to see that, it may remind you that it's time for you to do your practice. I promise you, you won't forget to do your practice for the rest of the year if you meditate on the suffering of sentient beings every day, even just for 5 minutes. 10 minutes is better. But if we can manage to do that, that's what keeps us going. Otherwise, our practice becomes dry. It's too intellectual. We reason with our practice, and we kind of argue with our practice. And yet, with bodhicitta, it's impossible to do that. How can bodhicitta be the wrong thing to do? How can bodhicitta be something that you can skip? We must be kind. His Holiness the Dalai Lama and all the high lamas that I've ever heard have always said that. You must be kind. That's what's happening. So I've pretty much stuck with teaching bodhicitta all my life, and I've been doing this for about 30 years. Bodhicitta is beautiful. It is nourishing. It's like food. And if you keep yourself nourished by practicing the bodhicitta, you will continue to be full and have confidence and be able to benefit sentient beings, even though it seems so hard to keep going. I mean, we all have jobs. So it seems so hard to keep going. But if you remember the bodhicitta, and that's your reason for practicing, you absolutely will not give up. I promise you, that's the answer. And we all have this, everyone I've talked to has this problem. I practice for part of the year. To keep that going, and that's not true of Tibetans necessarily, but it is true of Americans. Tibetans were brought up in a culture, how fortunate, where it's all about loving kindness, and the Dharma is part of their entire system. So it's in their blood, and it's in their brains, and it's everywhere. But we Americans like to have reasons for things. And so the best thing to do is to stop being so prideful and go back to the very reason why you're here. You're not here to wear a fancy robe. You're not here to receive high teachings and walk around so prideful. No, you're here first of all because you love His Holiness. And then you're here because you know that sentient beings suffer and that you can help. I know of nothing else that is more precious than that. You can help. We forget that. We think the practice is about us making advances. We should make advances in our practice, and it's true, we should. And yet, we have to remember that the true reason as to why we practice is love. Now, if there's anything that I've said that offends you, I'm sorry, but not really. Because I will sit here and pound bodhicitta into your heads until I no longer have the opportunity. Because it's what I believe and what I know will bring benefit to the world. It's what brought His Holiness to us. It's what will bring Him back. If we keep our promises and benefit sentient beings, He will return to us. Maybe He already has. Who knows? But it's our job to call Him with our hearts by practicing in the way that He taught us. And His Holiness Pena Rinpoche was one of the most stubborn lamas in the beginning. He just did not want to teach Dzogchen yet because he didn't want to throw Dharma on the floor. So instead, he wanted everybody to learn the great bodhicitta, and he made you understand that there is no power in the world, no power anywhere stronger than the bodhicitta. When little Tibetan kids are young, their moms or their ammas, their nannies, whoever is the one that teaches them and takes care of them, teach them about kindness. It's customary. It's what happens. And that doesn't happen here in America. It's so fortunate that Tibetan ammas, the mummies, they teach their children that way from birth. And I think in some ways, we should think of our own mothers who have taught us like that to be like a root guru to us. The first one that taught you to be kind, that's a root guru. The first one that taught you to love, that's a root guru. The first one that taught you that bodhicitta is the most important power in the universe, that's a root guru. His Holiness taught me that, and he is my root guru. I wish the fashion would turn around and there would be more teachings given out constantly about bodhicitta. I wish we would not let it go aside. I wish Tibetan lamas would not listen to us because we're so prideful and so willing to think that we know what's best. His Holiness was one of the last ones that gave in and began to teach some Dzogchen. So I think he feels the way I do, or felt the way I do, about that bodhicitta is the most important thing. Once when he saw the dogs that we were saving and the parrots that we were saving, he said, "That's Dharma. That's Dharma. Why is that not Dharma?" Well, no, I said that. I'm from Brooklyn. Why is that not Dharma? But that's Dharma, and that's what His Holiness said. And I believe it. I know it to be true. Kindness is the way. Sometimes we can be so prideful that we think it's not necessary for us, having practiced so well, to be kind. We can concentrate on the academic part, the intellectual part, and then we'll have it all down perfectly. But that's not really the truth. Academic is part of the teaching. Meditation is part of the teaching. Taking vows, that's part of it. But most importantly, please don't forget, most importantly is the great bodhicitta. It is the very display of all that is light and pure. It is the very display of goodness. We like to forget it and let it go, but please don't. I beg of you, don't do that. Your mind will stay fresh and sweet if you are always concerned for sentient beings. And we must always be concerned for sentient beings because they don't know how to take care of themselves. They don't know how to do what is necessary to accomplish any dharma or accomplish anything meaningful, really, anything meaningful in their lives. Many people don't. They get a scholarship and they go to college and then that's it, you've done it. But it's not true. It is most important to develop kindness. It is most important to be kind. And for those of you that are unforgiving in your manner, or demeanor rather, and not so kind, you don't give Buddhism a good image. That should be what it's all about to you. And I will assume that that probably isn't pleasant to hear, but it's what I believe and what I know. If you did nothing else but take the Bodhisattva vow and spend the rest of your life praying for and benefiting sentient beings, you will have accomplished a lot. So when you go back home, whether it's New York City or Kalamazoo, or wherever it is that you come from, bring this little bit of information with you. Look around. Stop closing your eyes. Are you going out to dinner this evening? Then notice the person that's sitting there on the street with nothing to eat. Maybe bring them what's left or give them some money for some food. If you're going to the movies, think about it twice. Go to the movie, but then take the same amount of money and give it to someone who really needs it. I believe in that. It's called paying it forward. And it's the best display you can possibly give people as to how the Dharma is. If you display your activity like that, they will understand. They will understand what Dharma is. But if we are self-important, prideful, and in love with ourselves, we will never see the beauty of Dharma, never. Never. And it's just, we must see this. We must understand that Dharma is not different from loving kindness. And it's not different from our nature. What was that? Ani, you trickster. Oh. I thought maybe it was, oh my gosh, get me a doctor. But we have to remember that kindness is the way, and kindness is the thing, and bodhicitta is the most powerful thing in the world. And if you are afraid because someone has done you wrongly or harmed you in some way, and if that makes you afraid, and I've had that experience, I've also found out that bodhicitta solves the problem. Bodhicitta ends the problem. If someone harms you and you instead give bodhicitta, some kind of kindness, then the problem is over. And His Holiness himself, with his own mouth, told me, there is nothing more powerful in all the world than the great bodhicitta. Nothing more powerful. And so I think whatever practice you know, whatever practice you do, meditate on compassion. Meditate on the suffering of sentient beings. Come to understand what it is that they go through, and that they will never have what you have. Never. Because the karma is not there. But you could help by offering the bodhicitta and offering yourself to the three precious jewels for their sake. Keep this phrase in your mind. If you're uncomfortable and your knees hurt or anything like that, for their sake. For their sake. My children. Please hold that in your heart and hold it in your mind. And even though these are just very simple words and they nothing to take home, nothing to be so proud of, but still, I wanted to tell you that if you don't have the bodhicitta, we have nothing. You are so needed in a world that is hungry for love. And excuse me, I get sentimental. But if you forget that, then your practice becomes, again, dry and dull, and you may forget. And it's because Dharma is like a wedding cake. Not only the schools of Dharma, but also the bottom, which is it's not lower, it's just the bottom. The bottom of the cake is the support. Without support, everything falls down. And bodhicitta is the support. So I know your hips hurt and your knees hurt and your eyes are tired, and I know what it is with retreats and long times that you sit in that one certain position. I can't even do it anymore because my knees have gone so bad. But I inherited that from my father, His Holiness Penna Rinpoche. So, well, that's all I'm going to burden you with tonight. I feel that you've spent a long day working very hard, and you should have your rest. But I wanted to tell you this one small thing. Don't forget love. Don't decide what it has to be. Don't forget the bodhicitta that is so needed, like food and water. Look and see what you can do to help others on ordinary levels too. You can't practice when you're hungry. So try to help all beings in any way that you can. And if you find yourself, I promise you, if you find yourself unable to keep going in your practice, stop. Go back to the beginning. Do the bodhicitta all over again. And then move on. You'll be refreshed. Your heart will be moved. That baby is adorable. And so that's all I'm going to share tonight. I thought that it might be helpful in your practice, especially in the middle where it's just getting really hard. I see people limping. So I want to give you a tip that I learned in Tashi Choling. Asper cream and Tramil. Really, if you can find any Tramil, just lay it on there. And if you can't find that, Asper cream works too. It helps, and you need help. Our bodies are unwilling to do what we want them to do, and they age. Too bad. So take care of yourself. Take care of your hearts. Give yourself the food you need to go on through practicing kindness. Be kind to yourself as well. Get your Tramil and put it on. And I'm thrilled to have this opportunity to be with you, even though I have nothing much to say. And thank you. Thank you for coming.
No.